Today is the 31st of December of 2020, the last day of this year, which I'm sure will go down in the history as not one of the best years in human civilization. This week we learning the last parsha, last chapter of the first book of 5 books of Moses, Bereshit, and the parsha is called Vayechi. First, of course, as usual, the content. Jacob lives his final 17 years of his life in Egypt. They basically tranquil and quiet, and he is enjoying his life. Before his passing, he asks Joseph to take an oath that he will bury him in the Holy Land. He blesses Joseph's 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, elevating them to the status of his own sons as leaders of the tribes within the nation of Israel. So instead of tribe of Joseph, we get 2 tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim, elevating them, and the patriarch desires on his deathbed to reveal the end of days to his children. But he is prevented from doing so, and instead he is forced basically to do the second best thing, is to bless his sons. Basically, some of them are blessings, some of them are not exactly the blessings, and they are basically a description of the tribe's roles or tribe's future major activities. Like, for instance, he's saying that the tribe of Judah will produce leaders, kings, and legislators, and the tribe of Levi will be the priests. Scholars will come from Issachar, and seafarers from Zebulun, and etc. Large funeral procession is organized by the Pharaoh, and it consists from all Jacob's descendants, of course, the Pharaoh's ministers, the leading citizens of Egypt, and the Egyptian cavalry. Accompanies Jacob. They all accompany Jacob to his final journey, to his final resting place in the Holy Land, where he is buried in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. Joseph dies too in Egypt at the age of 110. He too instructs that his bones must be taken out of Egypt and buried in the Holy Land, but this will take place much later when a redemption of and end of Jewish slavery takes place in Egypt many years later. Before his passing, Joseph conveys to the children of Israel the testament from which they will draw their hope and faith in these difficult years which are to come, the years of slavery. God will surely remember you, he says, and bring you up out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this is the content of this parsha. Now, as usual, let's look a little bit deeper. Jacob is on his deathbed. He summoned his children. He wanted to reveal to the children of Israel, which means all population of Israel, what will happen in the end of days. Rashi, following the Talmud, says that Jacob wished to reveal what will happen in the future, but the divine presence, his prophetic powers, was removed from him. So he tried to foresee the future, but he found he could not. And instead, he simply blessed his sons. Jewish people believe in what's called the end of days. This isn't the final end of the world, no, but merely the end of history as we know it. Today is the Jewish year 5781, and this is destined to take place sometime before year 6000. After the end of days, the world will continue as usual, with the big exception that there will be a world of peace, at least for 1000 years. There will be no disease and no suffering. The book of Daniel, chapter 7, 13-14 says, as the end of days approach, there are two paths that the world could take. The first is filled with kindness and miracles, with the Messiah given dominion, honor, and kingship, so that all people, nations, and languages would serve him. His dominion would be an everlasting dominion that would never pass, and his kingship will never be destroyed. This scenario could be brought at any time if we would just get our act together. We, meaning people on this planet. Meaning that the whole world would achieve the spiritual status of love thy friend as yourself. Yeah, you will say, well, desirable but not easy. In other words, our competitive antagonistic society should become altruistic. And look at this. To some degree, we are already doing it. Instead, with arrival of COVID-19, instead of competitive sports stars and selfish movie stars and reality show stars, we started uploading to our doctors and nurses fighting COVID-19. We are uploading to supermarket workers, barbers and hairdressers, public transport drivers, and much, much more other professions, what we call essential services. All of them taking a risk of getting infected for the sake of serving other people. Most of them they don't know even. We help our elderly neighbors during lockdowns, and much, much, much more is already taking place, which is a purely altruistic behavior. The other path is described as Messiah coming humble and riding upon a donkey, Zechariah 9:9. In this scenario, nature will take its course and society will undergo what we can perceive as a slow, painful deterioration with much suffering. God's presence will be hidden and his guidance will not be perceivable. According to this second path, there will be a valueless society, there will be a lot of animosity between people, and governments will become godless, basically. According to the Talmud, as the Messianic era approaches, the world will experience greater and greater turmoil, vast economic fluctuations, social rebellion, pandemics, widespread despair, and much more. However, we need to keep a positive outlook towards the future. The key is to maintain the hope of redemption. The Torah provides us, facilitates our hope for the future. Maimonides says that every day a Jew should earn for the Messiah. Not in order that the Jews should rule the world, no, or be exalted amongst the other nations, or even simply to eat and drink, be merry and rejoice. No, not for that purpose. But rather we earn for the Messiah so that we will have the time and the wisdom to learn Torah. The message should be clear. Keep focused on the Torah, for it is the voice of reason in our world of insanity. If we live with that knowledge today, then the Torah promises that the final resolution will come more quickly and painlessly. And at the very least, living with this understanding is sure to keep us among those who have perceived and preserved the sanity of this world, the world of confusion today, unfortunately, and total misinformation by the mass media. How can we hasten the coming of Messiah? The best way is to love all humanity generously, to keep the mitzvot of the Torah as the best we can, and to encourage others to do so as well. Despite the gloom, the world does seem headed towards redemption. One apparent sign is that the Jewish people have returned to the land of Israel and made it bloom again. Additionally, a major movement is afoot amongst young Jews returning to Torah studies and to Torah traditions worldwide. By the way, Maimonides states that the popularity of Christianity and Islam is part of God's plan to spread the ideals of the Torah throughout the world. This moves society closer to a perfected state of morality, which is badly needed, and toward a greater understanding of God. All this is in preparation for the Messianic age. The Messiah can come anytime, and it all depends on our actions. God is ready when we are. King David said, redemption will come today if we hearken to his voice. This last day of a very difficult, turbulent 2020, I would like to invite you all to think positive thoughts about you, your families, your communities, and your country's future. May the 2021 bring us all hope for a quick arrival of Messiah and worldwide redemption of all humanity. When we finish learning a book of Torah, we Jews say the following: Chazak, Chazak, v'nitzchazek, which means be strong, and may we be strengthened. May all humanity be strengthened and be strong and look forward to a much better future. Shabbat Shalom.
Shine.